Welcome to The Unspoken Truth. I'm your host, Rob Russ.
And I'm Edward Anderson.
G'day, Ed. How we doing, mate?
Living the dream, Robbie. How you doing, buddy?
Really well, really well. This is a story that's going to get you fired up, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to give you the unspoken truth about what's going on with these crazy governments all around the world, apparently saying that we're all going to die because the temperature got 1.5 degrees warmer. But here I am in Sydney with the coldest winter we've had in years. I'm like, I'm more likely to die by freezing to death than boiling to death. At least I can take my shirt off and go for a swim in the sunshine. I can't do that in the cold out here. We're going to talk about how the Victorian government and Daniel Andrews, in his infinite wisdom, has decided to ban natural gas. I'm going to show you some content from the Parliament, from the Senate of Australia, and it's really going to make you just shake your head and wonder what's going on. I want you to be across these things, ladies and gentlemen, because if you're a homeowner here in Australia, particularly in Victoria, this is coming for you. This is a really big problem. All of this that the Victorian government is doing is based upon lies. And the way that I can describe it for you folks is, once they control the energy, they already control the energy, but once they control it to a point where you're forced to do what it is that they want you to do, they'll be controlling you permanently. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion around that. So let's get started. All right, folks, there's been a big revelation, as I mentioned there at the top of the intro, that the Victorian government has decided and followed through with banning natural gas in all new homes. This follows a ban that happened in ACT, in the Australian Capital Territory as well. So the Victorian government has followed through there. It doesn't make any sense because in Victoria, they're sitting on 1,000 years worth of gas reserves. Gas is probably the number one fuel. If you did want to transition to green energy and turn coal off, gas is the way to do it. And the primary reason that I can think of is very simple. It's got nothing to do with science, got nothing to do with anything. Just think about how energy and electricity is generated. They burn coal to create steam to turn a turbine. Then it goes through power lines. And by the time it gets to your house, about 50 or 60% of that energy, that electricity, has gone away because the turbine is like a gazillion miles away in the scrub in the middle of nowhere. And that's true for any electrical system in any country on planet Earth. The power generations and the power plants are not in the cities. They're outside in rural areas, and then they put all the power lines to get you the power. So if you have a loss of 50 to 60% by the time it gets to you, doesn't that seem like it takes 50 to 60% more energy to actually create the energy? Well, the answer is yes. Natural gas is sitting in the pipes. It's dug out of the ground. Maybe it takes a little bit more effort and it costs a bit more money to do that. But when you get it and you turn your oven on and you turn your stove on, you're getting 100% of it. So it actually costs more money to turn the gas off and continue to generate electricity from coal. But they've turned the gas off now, and what they're going to do is they're going to turn the coal off as well, but they're going to try and replace it with green energy. But the green energy can't produce enough to cover off on what the coal is, but there's no gas to cover the shortfall. But what happens with the energy market, it's based around a supply and demand thing, is that when there's no more gas available because there's no more demand for that, you're going to collapse the economy from the inside out. Think of all the construction trades that are based around gas. Digging holes into the ground, laying pipelines into new buildings. The buildings get created. What about the plumbing trade? Plumbers and gas fitters. That's the trade. Plumbers and gas fitters come into your house and they fix the plumbing, the pipes and everything, and then they plumb in your gas stove, your gas hot water, your gas heater as well. That's all gone. So how many plumbers are there in Australia? Well, from my estimate, there is approximately, I run another podcast called The Electricians Co-op, and I estimate that there's somewhere in the vicinity of 100,000 to 200,000 electricians in Australia, and the plumbing trade is something similar. So there's about, so call it 150,000 tradies out there where a large percentage of their business, maybe as much as a third of their business, is now going to go away. And so over a period of time, the ability for people to actually get gas is going to be reduced, because if there's no more gas available for these new homes, and existing homes have that, the cost of that is going to go up because there's not as much there's not as much demand, so the supply is not there, so the price is going to go up. So not only are they driving inflation, they're increasing climate change, and they're increasing the carbon output because it costs more money to produce electricity via the coal-fired power plants that we currently have. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, there was, in the United States, they were talking about turning off all the gas in New York Remember that? And I remember that clearly because your son has a pizzeria in that part of the world. I'm like, how on earth is he going to make pizzas in an electric oven? It's just not going to work. You're going to kill an entire part of your culture, for heaven's sake. You know, pizza is a big thing. Cooking with gas is a big thing.
They might have grabbed the electric fence on that one in New York. Yeah. So what is the story then? So are they cutting off natural gas altogether in
No, they're
Victoria?
cutting off. So you no longer can have gas appliance in new builds. So if there's a new building, you're building a new house, a new apartment block, no more natural gas in that at all. Completely banned.
Appliances. Right. And are they so that's going forward. What about the existing? Are they going to phase out the existing ones somehow? Mm-hmm. Did they have a program for people to turn?
Let me play the video. Okay. I've got a video of Senator Malcolm Roberts from One Nation, and he will explain it to you. So I'm going to play the video, and we'll stop and start that as we go, so we can comment on that. If you haven't seen this, ladies and gentlemen, this will really. This is a head scratcher and a head shaker, and it's going to get you fired up.
Thank you. As a servant to the many different people who make up our one Queensland community, I thank Senator Pocock for his motion. I question why we need a dedicated export facility for the Beetaloo Basin natural gas. Australia has 10 natural gas export terminals, 2 in Darwin. Beetaloo output is expected to be huge, and much of it should be used here in Australia, not exported. Australia's parasitic malinvestments in wind and solar is destroying our energy generation capacity. Gas generation is essential to keeping the lights on, while commercial hot water and cooking are likewise essential. Everyday Australians will never accept the insane idea that Australia should stop using gas. This is despite the advertising spent on climate campaigns designed to do one thing: line the pockets of climate carpetbaggers, like those funding Teal Senator David Pocock's campaign.
Before we go any further, Teal Senator David Pocock is the guy sitting behind him, that fuckwit sitting behind him.
Nice.
These people are just fucking morons. What this guy behind him, so this is Malcolm Roberts here, David Pocock behind him is just terrified that he's going to burn to death or boil to death by climate change. And he's so arrogant and so unbelievably stupid. This might be the stupidest person on planet Earth. He thinks that he can control the weather. He thinks that turning off gas and causing all these problems in our society, he thinks that he can control the weather. That's how arrogant these politicians are, and that's how stupid they are.
Gas connections are being banned in new builds, and existing lines will be ripped out because at some point we will need to recycle that copper, since world production will never be able to supply the copper needed for UN net zero.
Boom, boom.
My own building that I rent in Campbell, in Canberra, sent out a note to owners this week saying the body corporate has been told they will need to remove the gas hot water system, rip out the pipes and remove all gas appliances by 2035. Homeowners will have to pay the bill, likely over $1 million all up. This is a brand new building. What a waste.
Imagine if you lived in that building, you're part of the body corporate. It happened actually in the building that I live in. So when I first moved in here, there's 6 apartments in this part of it, and there's 6 apartments in the back. So there's 12 apartments. When I came into this building, in the first week that we were here, I live on the top floor of a three level walk up, and I heard the neighbour downstairs go, "Ah!" like a big giant blood curdling scream. And like I ran out onto the balcony. I looked over, and the lady was on the ground, man. She's like face down on the ground. Like what the hell? Face down on it, and I'm like, what happened? And I looked, and I could see that the tiles that were on, so the balcony had, on the edge of it, had tiles. The tiles had fallen off, and she was down there, and it hit her on the fucking head, man. Hit her on the head and like on the back, and like knocked her down to the ground. And I immediately, like, we'd been here for like a week or something, right? I got on the phone and I called the owner and I said, hey, this is what happened here. This is really serious. You need to do something about this. And literally $50,000 per apartment, 12 apartments, 12 owners had to cough up 50 grand to fix the tiles around here. Unbelievable. So imagine how much impact that actually has on you as an individual property owner. Now imagine if the strata came to you and said, all of a sudden, we've got to get rid of all the gas appliances here. We've got to pull that out. It's going to cost $1 million divided by 12 people here. You're up for about $90,000 to $100,000 each. All right, you've got to cough that up. We're going to create special levies. You would actually sell your property on the spot. And then anybody that was buying into that would look at the strata before they looked at it and go, I'm not buying that. So the price of the property will completely collapse.
Sure.
So not only are they driving inflation, I'm talking about an accident that happened here, and something that needed to be solved. That's like a serious safety issue. But you're talking about something, what Malcolm's talking about here is completely self-inflicted. It's a self-inflicted wound. And you're going to not only are you going to destroy the economy, you're destroying businesses, you're destroying small businesses like plumbers and gas fitters like we talked about, but you're destroying property owners now as well and investors. Like, what? This is madness.
On one hand, the green ideologues will require owners to spend tens of thousands of dollars per unit to pull out near-new hot water heating, gas lines and equipment and replace it with less efficient solutions. And then the ideologues will complain, rents have gone up.
Yeah.
Of course,
driving
rents
inflation.
are going up. Green ideology is forcing rents up by forcing landlords' costs up. How are the climate lobby not connecting the dots here? How? How much more productive capacity are we going to rip out to replace with shiny new electric capacity that doesn't do the job as well as gas?
Look at this dickhead in the background, not paying any attention or pretending not to pay any attention. And in my view, Ed, this guy is just a puppet, and he's a useful idiot. He thinks he believes in all of these things.
Okay, well,
he thinks it's real, but it's not.
Are we gonna hear him talk or?
No, he doesn't speak.
Okay, yeah, because I had a theory. I wanted to ask you about that. So let's finish this clip then, because I want to ask you that question.
Never mind the environmental waste of tossing millions of stoves into landfill where they can rot beside broken and toxic solar panels and wind turbine blades. And these panels and these people were worried about plastic straws.
Yeah.
Please. One gas provider proudly claims on their website they're banning gas to save the planet. No, you are depriving Australians of our own gas so you can sell it for a larger profit into an energy-starved world market. A situation that the government's price cap on gas made worse because it makes export more profitable than domestic sale in a disrupted supply market. Meanwhile, another energy retailer is advertising on their website, quote, listen to this, we all like to do our bit for the planet, so you'll be happy to know you can reduce your household carbon emissions by switching from appliances running on grid electricity to natural gas. It goes on to say, quote, gas is the perfect partner to solar, and that by connecting your home to natural gas, you can lower your carbon emissions by up to 77% in Victoria compared to electric cooking and hot water appliances. Which is it?
Yeah.
Which is it? Is gas a perfect partner to solar, or is it environmental vandalism? Another energy provider's website has a spiel about renewable gas, which turns out to be hydrogen. Hydrogen is not even a viable fuel yet, and it takes huge amounts of energy to make it out of water, and yet they had to rebrand it already. That must be some sort of record. What a mess climate baggers have created through their Greens and Teal shills in the Senate. What I have not heard in the gas debate at all is a major reason gas is better than electricity, and that is transmission loss. Electricity suffers transmission loss getting from the point of generation miles out in the countryside into homes in the city. Gas does not suffer a transmission loss. Factor that into energy calculations and electrification becomes an even worse idea. Banning Australians from accessing our own natural resource while allowing our gas to be flogged off to international bidders at a premium, just as our coal is shipped to China, where it powers the solar panel and wind turbine export industry that the Greens and Teal Senator David Pocock worship, with no hint of irony. Meanwhile, a rapidly increasing global energy market values and prefers hydrocarbon fuels, coal, oil and gas. The West are deindustrialising, while the rest of the world, including China, India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, are industrialising using our gas and our coal. The war on gas is a heist of our nation's natural resources. It's sacrificing economic prosperity and the opportunity for advancement for all Australians in the name of a corrupt United Nations sustainability agenda that sustains nobody except the billionaires behind it all. It's wealth transfer from we, the people, to globalist billionaire elites and globalist predators like BlackRock, Vanguard and State Street. One Nation rejects the electrification of Australia's gas supply and questions the Middle Arm project. Natural gas must stay as a choice for all Australians.
Absolute madness, hey? What do you think?
Well, first of all, that guy should be running for PM. I don't know. Is that guy? Is he a senior senator in it, or is he like nobody?
No, man. He's a right-wing, white supremacist extremist, according to Australian politicians. No joke. So he's from one of the minor parties called One Nation, And there's literally I think there's just 2 senators, him and Pauline Hanson, the founder of One Nation.
Nice. Okay, so the question I have, so let's circle back to the stooge sitting behind him, who is the guy. This is what kind of frustrates me, is that was a brilliant speech, but that speech was heard by the people inside the chamber there, and a few people who watch videos.
The unspoken truth.
Like me. But, you try to get that stooge to show up on a debate stage with this guy, and it'll never happen.
No.
Right? So the public is never really getting the real story.
That's why I think he's not even real, man. Like, he's just an AI. He's like an AI insert into the Matrix. He's not a real person, because he can't really believe that turning off natural gas and causing all of that financial hardship is going to change the weather. No normal, reasonable person could possibly believe that. No normal person could believe and think that they could sign a document, some legislation, some rule, some law, that they can control the weather. No person would do that. But he thinks that he can do that. But I don't think he thinks that. He's just a useful idiot. He's a sock puppet, man.
Well, see, that's what I was going to ask you, whether this guy is a true believer, a true ideologue on this topic, or is he a stooge for the powers to be out of Switzerland?
He's a stooge.
Okay,
but he would never admit that.
Of course
we have.
Never do. Jaqueen, whatever her name, what's her name in New Zealand? Or then Jacinta
Ardern, yeah.
I mean, she would never say that she was given marching orders but of course she was. She was just a mouthpiece. Yeah, and now they finally booted her out of there. But I think that she got a promotion at the WEF, right? Isn't she the head of
Harvard?
Yeah, Harvard. There you go. Yeah. So, boy, didn't that tell the whole story?
Talk about bottom of the barrel jobs with bottom of the barrel people.
But no. At Harvard, she's going to be celebrated, and she's going to be in that little bubble that's going to massage her and make her feel really important. So as long as she stays in that bubble, her mental health will be secured. But
we had a Teal senator, again, one of the other minor parties, and she was going back and forth from Victoria. She's like one of these biggest climate advocates that the world, like, I follow her on Twitter every day, and it's like henny penny, the sky is falling, man. I swear to you, there's going to be another ice age. We're going to get hit by an asteroid, or there's like 9 other pandemics in the next 3 weeks. There's just henny penny, the sky is falling, and it's so bad. And the hypocrisy is just so fucking unbelievable, Ed. She went back and forth from Melbourne to Canberra, which is maybe around a 1-hour flight, maybe 28 times in business class.
Yeah.
And so her carbon footprint is much bigger than yours and mine combined, because we don't go on domestic flights back and forth like that. Are you kidding me? Those people should be riding their push bike, but they shouldn't. They actually shouldn't even be allowed to ride their push bike, because in order to ride a push bike, I need to use fossil fuels to create the steel that is in your push bike, and then I need to lubricate the chain with some oil or some graphite lubricant to put on the chain. So if you're really a green zealot, if you're the zealot that believes that you can control the weather, you need to put your sneakers on, but you're not allowed to wear sneakers either, because they're made from rubber, and rubber is a petroleum product, and the foam that's actually in your sneakers, you're not allowed to wear them either. You're not allowed to wear a pair of rubber flip-flops. You can't wear glasses. Yep, you can't do anything. You're not allowed to wear a hat. You need to wear a Hessian bag made from hemp. And you need to wear a loincloth around your waist, and you have to fucking walk to Parliament.
Can't go to the doctor.
Nope, can't do that either. Can't drive.
You can't take a shower. You can't. Nope. Can't use soap or shampoo.
I saw Rishi Sunak got on a plane, and he's getting on the British government private jet to go and lecture people on climate change and do that. And everyone's like, "Isn't that a bit of hypocrisy there, boss? Because you're getting on a private jet going to do that. Like, what's the story?" And he's like, "Oh, that's the most efficient use of my time." So once again, rules for me.
Yep.
And rules for thee. Yeah, you'll do as you're told.
Yep. And they're all hypocrites across the board. But you know what? They keep getting fucking reelected. What the hell, people? What are you doing out there? What are you doing out there? You keep reelecting these people. So
they're driven by the mainstream media that says that getting rid of gas appliances is a good idea.
Yeah, but for those of people out there who are listening to this show, If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Make sure you become part of this community. We're going to tell you things that you're not going to hear from the mainstream media. You know, the availability of alternative media like us is everywhere now. It's not like 10 years ago or 20 years
No
ago.
excuse. Yeah.
There's no excuse for not being educated. And even if you didn't have access to us, the idea that some guy's knocking on your door because the government told him to rip out your gas stove, that should
Get out of here.
That should be kind of a red flag,
It's a red flag from your government right there, isn't it?
I mean, how much of an ouch point do you people need before you realize what's going on? There are your sporadic heroes out there running for office and who are in office. Support those people, so find a way. Now, even if the elections are rigged, that's all the more reason for you to vote, because you got to make it so overwhelmingly in their favor that they overcome the scam.
I got to have to put my hand up here and admit to a giant mistake that I've made. And I've made this mistake for a long time, and I've been wanting to out myself publicly about this for a while, and it's a bit of a strange thing. But over the years, I've read a lot of books around communism, and I've listened and read the Gulag Archipelago a couple of times to learn the lessons of the past and why that Soviet system and communism was tried properly and it failed, and why it failed so dismally. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn goes into great detail to explain to you the reasons why it came undone and what happened and just the madness of it. And we're seeing elements of that often in our society now, where they're trying to control everything from whether it's a boy or a girl or some other version of something that no one knows what it is, even though every person in their mind knows that there's only a boy or a girl. And then now they're trying to control how you cook your food.
Yep.
They're trying to they're trying to control every aspect
and what you eat.
Yeah, and what you eat as well. They're trying to control every aspect of your life, right? And when you go back to the Gulag Archipelago and you read that book, you'll find that that's the most important book in human history. That's more, in my view, it's more important than the Bible, because the Bible gives you, and that's a big call, right? And that's because it shows to you that government can't fix problems. Jesus will fix all of your problems if you just go away and do that. But I think most religious people know that. That's a good thing, right? Whether you're reading the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah, or something else in between, if you're a religious person, you know that can be solved, right? So you have that level of faith. And I admire people that do that. I'm not a religious person, but I admire people that have that. But beyond those religious documents, that book, the Gulag Archipelago, is, in the series of books that it is the most important book ever written. And I used to think, and here's me outing myself, I used to think that the reason that communism failed in the Soviet Union is because you couldn't control what was in people's minds. You can control every aspect of their life, which is what communism is about. And they control every aspect of your life as an individual because you're not important. It's only the collective that's important, not the individual. And because of that, people were just forced to live a life in despair, where they pretended to work and the government pretended to pay them and nothing ever happened. They just lived a life of misery and despair. And I used to think that no matter what, you can't control somebody's mind, but I was wrong. I'd never been more wrong about anything ever. And politicians and the ideology and the media that is out there today is very, very successful at controlling your mind. They're getting you to buy into a narrative. I was psyoped by COVID when it first happened. I thought it was real. And I'm not saying that it's not real, but when it happened, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a pandemic like 1918. And I'd read a lot about that history. I know about that history. Part of the reason that World War I ended was because of that. And then I'm learning about vaccinations, and I'm learning about from Robert F. Kennedy in his book, The Real Anthony Fauci. And I discover alternative media, and I discover all of these other things that are out there. And I realize very quickly that I've been psyoped. I've been psyoped several times in my life. I was psyoped when I joined the military. I was blinded by my patriotism and my wanting to go and serve, but not realizing that the politicians that were in charge were never going to have to pay the price that I was going to pay. I put my life on the line. A couple of times I was nearly killed because of stupid shit that went on. But no politician would have cared about that. There wouldn't have been a military funeral, and no prime minister would have turned up to my funeral. What a load of shit. That's like the biggest psyop of all. Whatever you do, folks, if you're a military age male, do not join the military. Do not join the police force. Do not serve your government. You'll know that they're not there for you. They're not there for you. Don't do it. You've been psyoped. If you're drawn to something like that, don't make the same mistakes as me. That's just my opinion. Don't do it. Don't join the military. If we end up in a shooting war with China, there was media out earlier today saying that the American government is preparing for a war with China in 2025. Imagine if all the military-age males suddenly get called up. Just say no. Just don't go. You don't have to fight a war with China. Why do we have to do that? I don't want to fight a war with China. I've got lots of Chinese friends here in Sydney. They're wonderful people. They're fantastic people. The Chinese Communist Party is not the Chinese people. Why do we have to go to war with the Chinese people? That's what we're going to do. It's like, don't do what the government tells you to do under no circumstances. These people are just horrible. And that video proves that they want every aspect of your life controlled. And according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, they can't do that, and communism doesn't work. Eventually, it collapses under its own weight. But the reality is they can control you, and they are controlling you. 99% of Australians went and got double jabbed. What the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with you people? Why are you so stupid? I have no sympathy for any of you. I can't believe that you listen to what they say. I can't believe it. I can't believe you listened to what Scott Morrison said. I saw him the other day, walking by himself.
You and I, the entire time, were doing our best to get the message, to tell the truth, to get the message out to people. And early on, no, look, I was like you too. When it, in the early days of that worldwide flu that happened, it was hard to push back, to disagree, because the way, look, these guys are fantastic salesmen, right?
The weight of it was overwhelming, wasn't it?
Right. They were using the messaging was, this is a potential existential threat to humanity. That kind, right?
I was psyoped, man. I believed it.
And there was no alternative position being put out. There's no pushback. There's nobody saying, whoa, hold on a second. It's not that bad. It's not what you think. There was none of that. Okay. And now we know why there wasn't any alternative messaging, because it wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to disagree. And so when you have the weight of the U.S. government coming in, plus, they brought social, the media was all in on it. And social media was all in on it. And so this whole idea of shaming your neighbors, and I think that is largely why communism lasted as long as it did, was the notion of shaming, of being shamed by, you had peer pressure, people telling you, well, why aren't you standing in line for 5 hours to get that loaf of bread? Who do you think you are to get a side hustle business and make money on the side? Who do you think you are, right? And so and you have the Stasi police, right? Or you got family members turning in family members for doing things that were not.
We had the Premier of New South Wales telling on national TV, telling us to report on our neighbours.
Right.
Exactly the same way as Stasi East Germany, exactly the same way as the Soviet Union, and people did it.
Yep.
They did it.
Yep.
They did it. They reported on their neighbours, like in North Korea.
Yep.
And off to the gulag with you, off to the police station with you, off to the fines, and then the police came around and locked them up. The cops came around and did that. Like, they're no different to what happened in World War II in the Soviet Union, no different to North Korea. They're exactly the same. The same. But people are so blind, they can't see it.
I mean, they're a little nicer, and the facilities are a little, I mean, they got nice, clean beds, but it's still, you're still locked up. You're still being put away. Look, I did a year and a half ago. I was doing videos on these concentration camps in China, in Australia, in Canada, showing, documenting people being locked up for not following the rules, and
we know it was all bullshit because all of the fines were thrown out.
Well,
the whole thing was bullshit.
Eventually, at the very end, right?
Yeah.
But until then, and I'll guarantee you, there were probably people who did pay those fines, and they probably never got it back, right? They probably never got it refunded, right? So the oops, whatever, you'll forget about it. A couple of years ago, go by, you'll forget whatever.
So I want to throw to another video here, Ed, and show people how this is all based on a lie. How the unspoken truth of the Victorian government is that they're lying to the population saying that we need to get rid of gas because of these statistics. So let's take a look at the video.
As they said on Friday, if they've been caught out by the facts, why on earth are they doing it?
It's a very good question. And to me, it's government greenwashing. It's claiming an environmental benefit, which absolutely isn't there. In fact, the opposite is there. So I guess it's virtue signalling. I guess it's looking for cheap green votes. I can't really explain it.
Give us a sense of what this impact will mean on households and businesses. I'm interested, obviously, both in terms of cost to consumers, but also energy reliability.
Well, it's going to unfortunately have negative effect on both. So it's going to drive cost up, unavoidably, the simple economics of supply and demand. So the government is forcing a reduction of supply. Demand will be there and it won't be able to be met. The costs, there's a lot of fixed costs for a large network like the gas network, and that will eventually be spread over less and less people until the cost becomes unsustainable, which I assume is all part of the strategy. Reliability, on the other hand, as we know, the electricity grid in Victoria is already struggling to cope with demand at the peak. And turning off more gas, half of the energy to Victorian homes is gas. So it's completely impossible to turn off all gas supply. But at the margin, stopping people from using gas on new homes will drive greater demand on the electricity grid and it will burn more brown coal.
That's the thing that doesn't make sense. That's what we said before. Why would why would you turn gas off when you're trying to reduce emissions? Because when you turn the gas off, the emissions from coal goes up because you need more demand for coal. But then it just doesn't. Okay. So the whole thing's based on a lie. It's a lie.
You know what? When you say it doesn't make sense, again, we go back to context, right? Right. Yep. To us, it doesn't make sense. But if your objective is you will own nothing by 2030 and you will like it, this does make sense, right?
And what he said at the start, right? That like Peter asked him why are they doing that, and he's like, he's baffled, right? He doesn't know what to say. The only thing that I can think of is it's greenwashing and try to buy green votes. He's got some good stats here for us. Let's have a listen.
Okay.
You made the point, I saw a statement where you excoriated the government on Friday that you issued, and making the point, pulling the minister up, the environment minister announced his policy, pulling her up with her claim, or at least the inference, that the 17% she quotes about gas emissions in the state isn't the truth when it comes to residential gas, is it?
It's a lie.
Absolutely. It's a very devious statistic, because residential gas in Victoria accounts for less than 2% of all emissions. And this policy is purely targeting residential use of gas. So they're focused.
So let's say that they've come out and said 17% of residential houses use gas. It's a lie. They lied to you. Again, the government's lying to you. We didn't lie about that. We just kind of said it was that. That's part of the. It's just fucking bullshit, man. They're just lying to you at every turn.
On absolutely the wrong thing, but they will cause enormous pain. You asked me about the impact on households. Well, a lot of households have someone who works in the HVAC industry or the plumbing industry, tradesmen, and they will be impacted by this disruptive and precipitous action, which has happened. The master plumbers came out and said they're very disappointed. There's been no proper consultation, and plumbers will no longer be able to do a lot of the work that they currently do in terms of gas fittings. There's no provision for retraining them. That, of course, would take years anyway.
So that's pretty much the video there, and they kind of just back and forth a little bit more on the points that we've covered already. But I just wanted to show that because again, it shows that they're talking about 17%, but the real number is 2%. Yeah. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen in Europe, and we've seen on mainstream media in Europe, that Europe is going to actually burn alive and everybody is going to die, and it's the world record temperatures. But statistically, when you take the air temperature, you need to take it from 2 meters above the ground. That's the international standard, the recognized way of doing it. But these Europeans and these climate change zealots, these freaks, are taking the temperature on the ground, which of course is going to be hotter than 2 meters above the ground. So if you can't show me the full statistics of, okay, you're saying that it's much hotter than what it has normally been. Okay, cool. I get it. Show me how you measured that temperature. Where are the weather stations where you're getting those averages? They can't produce that. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, even if it is true, even if it is hotter, you can't tie it back to me driving my car. You can't. You just can't. It's not possible. I don't believe it.
120,000 years. Do you know where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so last week, Cortez, AOC, whatever her name is, she was quoted as saying that there was a day last week that was the hottest day in 120,000 years. 120,000 years. Okay,
but that's what I'm saying. Show me how you got to that statistic. Exactly. Show me where the temperatures were taken, the exact weather stations that they were taken. Show me the exact statistics, because you can't. It's a lie.
These people do not. Apparently, they never expect a follow-up question. They don't expect anybody. They never expect to be checked. They throw out statistics to make their point, and they don't expect any follow-up questions. Like the people created the policy about gas in Victoria. They probably never expected anybody to challenge that 17% number. Who's gonna bother to look that up?
No one watches what the government's doing. No one's listening to any of that. All right.
And as it turns out, though, through a little research, I did find out where AOC got her talking point. And that was the day before the Gutierrez, the president of the United Nations, gave a long speech where he quoted that figure. He said that we had the warmest day in 120,000 years. Again, where did you get that information? And he says, and because he goes on, and by the way, a little spoiler alert, this is what my topic is going to be about tomorrow, about his little speech, how the earth is now boiling. That's the new phrase. Now we're boiling. And he said,
I've got that video. Can I play that video?
Oh, you do? Good. Excellent. Yeah, play it, please.
Let me play it. Let's talk about it, because it's funny.
This is fun with this guy.
It is unequivocal. Humans are to blame. All this is entirely consistent with predictions and repeated warnings. The only surprise is the speed of the change. Climate change is here. It is terrifying. And it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable. The heat is unbearable. And the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable. Leaders must lead.
The level is unacceptable, because you've got all the money and I don't. I want the money and you're not going to have any more of it. I'm going to turn you off.
I mean, I can't believe it. Here we are in the middle of July and it's really, really hot.
No shit.
Never happened before.
The temperature, just listen to what he said. The temperature is unbearable and the air is unbreathable. Well, where is the temperature unbearable? Yeah, so what if it's hot on a summer's day? Go inside in the air conditioning. Okay, cool. And the air is unbreathable. Where is the air unbreathable? There's plenty of people that live in Arizona and Texas in the desert and it's hot. They can still breathe. They still survive. In fact, there's millions of people that live in those states. There's millions of people that live in Saudi Arabia.
Now, he's in New York. All right. So now New York right now, they're having a lot of smoke coming down from the Canadian wildfires. So,
but nobody died, man. You can still breathe the air.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think. It's not like if you go back and watch the old movies, it's set in New York in the 1970s. You see smog filled, skyline, and L.A. right, smog, and and
that's all been fixed, largely been resolved.
That's not an issue anymore. So we have done more. So in our air quality, no problem. Water quality, drinking water, no problem. But these people, they have agendas, and they need fear to advance their agendas. And
that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
That there, like, let's just talk about that for a second. Sorry to interrupt you, but no. I used to, like I said, man, I had to put my hand up, and I have to out myself saying that you can't control somebody's mind. You can't. But people are watching this guy, this Gutierrez idiot, thinking that it's true. Yeah, the world is like, man, it's such a hot day. You're right. There's bushfires. Oh man, that must be from global warming. But there's not a single weather event on planet Earth that anybody could ever tie back to global warming.
No.
Because there's no way that you could prove that that cyclone or that bushfire or that earthquake or that volcano going off was because of climate change. You couldn't prove that. The volcanoes that have gone off in the last couple of years have emitted more CO2 into the atmosphere than all of human history, all of humankind collectively together. The one that went off in the middle of the Pacific Ocean was the biggest event ever. Mm-hmm. And what about the Nord Stream pipeline that the American government blew up?
Do it. Yeah, that's right.
That's the biggest man-made climate change catastrophe in history.
Exactly.
But nobody's talking about it.
No.
That's
nobody wants to get to the bottom of that one.
Don't touch that electric fence, whatever you do. It's crazy, man. It's fear that they're using to control your mind. So what do you think, Ed? How do we avoid that fear? How do we not get psyoped by these idiots?
Well, the most important thing you do is stay plugged into programs like ours.
Yep.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. We are going to tell you the unspoken truth, and you should not rely on any one source for information. You should look at several sources, and then in aggregate, you can kind of have a sense of what's right or wrong. And over the course of time, people's reputation. Look, my reputation is very important to me, right? I don't say things lightly, and if I have an opinion that I don't feel really strong about, I'll say so, and I'll say why. And over the course of time, you're going to find people who are trusted sources, right? And that's the best you can do. And no one's going to ever get things exactly right. But you also, over the course of time, can see who has an agenda and who, and pretty much every mainstream media outlet has an agenda. So that's why their ratings are so god awful. That's why nobody follows the mainstream media anymore. The jig is up. People realize that these people are ideologues and they're not telling you the truth. So, alternative media. So first thing people do is find a good source or two or three of alternative information like ours, and then develop a sense of critical thinking. Don't take things at face value. The FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, the headline news was the second largest crypto exchange goes out of business. But over the course of time, we realized that he was heavily involved in money laundering between the government and Ukraine. So, don't just stop at the headlines. You got to ask yourself, what I do out of habit now is I say, why is they telling me? Why are they giving me that headline?
Well, I try and use the Chris Voss methodology. If you don't know, folks, Chris Voss was an FBI negotiator. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. And I can sum it up and I can spoil it all for you by saying really what he does is he asks the question, how? So you can ask a different version of that. So the idea and the concept behind that is if there's a bank robber in the bank and he's got 9 hostages and Chris is on the phone to him going, all right, man, like what are your demands? What do you want? And the guy goes, I want a bus. And so Chris would say, well, what type of bus, man? Do you want like a 22-seater bus, a 12-seater bus? Do you want a 57-seater bus? Do you want a bus? Do you want it to have all fuel, half fuel? Do you want us to give you a driver? Are you going to drive it? So he would ask a series of these how questions, and the how questions would discombobulate the actual bad dude and get that bad dude to start giving on your side. Well, I would just get me a bloody bus. I just want a bus. And then there would be all of this back and forth that was going on. Some really great stories in his book, and he kind of explains to you exactly why that works in psychology and how that works. It used to be about, you've got to listen to this person. What are they doing? What are their body language? What's their tone? What's their inflection? But all of that is just complete bullshit. So when Guterres from the UN comes out and says the air is unbreathable, well, I don't say how, but I say where. Well, I've never been anywhere on planet Earth, and I've been to a lot of different places, like a lot of people that have traveled, and I've never been anywhere where it's unbreathable. Even when it stinks like raw sewage in Indonesia or Thailand or some place where there's some war zone where there's no sanitation, it's still breathe. I can still breathe the air. It's a bit stinky here, but I can still breathe. And I've never been anywhere where the heat is unbearable. I've been in a desert in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait when it's like 52 degrees Celsius, and I'm like, it's a hot day, but like I'm not going to die because there's shade here and I've got water and I'm like, I've never been anywhere where he's talking about that. So what he's talking about is complete bullshit to my anecdote anyway. But I don't know anywhere else on planet Earth where there's no mainstream news story about climate change where the air is unbreathable and you can't live there because the heat's unbearable. People still live in the Sahara Desert. Like,
Yeah.
what a load of shit. Everything he's saying is a load of shit. And in my view, taking that critical thinking, as you mentioned, and using the Chris Voss methodology of just asking the question of how. All right, okay, it's the hottest day in 140,000 years. Okay, how did you actually measure that? Where are the weather? Show me the weather stations and the collective average of those weather stations that showed me that it was there. They can't.
No,
and even if they could, to my level of satisfaction, I'd go, okay, cool. But then what? So what? It's all bullshit. It's all fake at face value. It's fake to scare you, to control your mind. And I made a mistake thinking that people can't control your mind, but it's not true. These people are holding the thing in front of you going, look at climate change. Look at climate change. Stick this in your body. You have to eat this. You can't cook with that. They're really doing that. They really are controlling people's minds.
Yep. And because there is no pushback, there's no follow-up question from the media.
It's weak.
Anybody. That's right. You will never see these people debate. That Gutierrez would never have said that sitting on a stage during a debate setting on that topic, because he knows that statement's going to be challenged. They rely on a compliant media, and the media is in on this. This is all, and the media, they're corporate owned. Okay, there are corporations, there are entities who are controlling the narrative that's put out there. Well, I'm going to do a segment pretty soon here on the secret organization that's responsible for setting the news agenda. Stay tuned for that sometime this week. Maybe I should do that tomorrow. That's a good one. And
Watch out for the electric fence.
Yeah, I'm going to expose the organization responsible for setting the news agenda throughout the world. That should be a pure surprise winning segment right
Peace.
there.
All
So that's that. So, and what was I going to say? Because I had a really profound point on that. Yeah. So the remember, there is a worldwide agenda in play here, and this is about control, and there's a lot of things converging right now, including the worldwide monetary system. We have a competition going on right now in the world between to see which is going to be the dominant currency going forward in the world. Is it going to be the U.S. dollar? Is it going to be this new BRICS-backed currency? Is it going to be the Unicoin? Is it going to be the World Coin? Okay, and every one of those projects, they want to be the standalone project. And so there's a lot at stake here. And remember what Rothschild says. Let me control the money, nothing else matters. The person who controls the money controls the world. The person, what's the statement from Kissinger? You control the food supply, you control the country. You suppose the energy supply, you control whatever it is. And you control the money, you control the world. There are a few little nexus, little choke points where if you control it, you control the world. And the big enchilada coming up right now is the monetary system. There's a lot of money at play here. And this whole business about how you will own nothing and you will like it, you won't own it, but somebody's going to. The elites are going to own it. You're going to be eating bugs while they're going to keep eating their steaks. So
well. Spoiler alert on all of that, Ed, as well. And let's close out with this thought and this point. You know, the production of fertilizer worldwide has gone down by 25%. And we've seen the Russians being completely cut off from fertilizer. The strange thing is here in Australia, we have all the natural gas in the world we need to make the fertilizer, but we're not actually embracing that for some reason. And we could replace the Russians like overnight because of that. I mean, it takes time for industries to ramp up, but you kind of get the idea. We could step into the breach there and solve that problem. But if 25% of the world's fertilizer has gone away and food production requires fertilizer, and the food production goes down by a magnitude of 4 or 5 if fertilizer is not utilized. And we saw that in Sri Lanka, right? So in Sri Lanka, they went to all of this this green ESG nonsense, and they went to organic farming, this nonsense, and the amount that they could actually output had reduced so significantly that it was causing starvation.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually believe that that is part of their deliberate plot. You would have heard of this eugenesis methodology that they want to do. There's too many people on planet Earth. All right, well, let's get rid of your mum and dad first, shall we? Like, the people that are out there saying that, Bill Gates is saying that it's an overpopulation thing. There's all of these other, even Kamala Harris came out and said the other day that there was too many people when there's less people. There's signs going up around the United States saying don't have kids because it's bad for climate change. So imagine the little kids that see those signs and say, don't have kids. What do you mean? I'm a kid. Am I bad for climate change? Then they have all of these bad things going on. What they're doing is they're systematically destroying the economy and systematically using climate change as an excuse to actually create another lockdown. They'll use some version of Ebola to create a pandemic, which is not going to work because no one's going to believe any of that. So they're going to use climate change to create huge fear and huge lockdowns to actually make that happen. And in the process, they're not getting rid of it, they've gotten rid of it. So if the fertilizer production in the world has gone away by 25%, these things take a long time to play out because there's large stockpiles of food in the world. But all of a sudden, if there's only 1/5 of the food that's available in the world, what do you think happens to all of those people? It's mass starvation. And I'm not talking about Australia or the United States. I'm talking about the third world. I'm talking about Africa, and I'm talking about parts of Asia. And if they're closing farms, and John Kerry comes out and says that farms and food production is bad for climate change, and that idiot Rutte in Holland says that, yeah, we've got to get rid of these farms, and they're closing the farms. They're closing down food production, getting rid of fertilizer. And if there's 1/5 of the food that's available now in the future, fast forward 12 months into the future, we're going to be suffering from mass starvation. And the economies are going to collapse. And as you said, it's coming to a crescendo, right? The economies collapse because of mass starvation in population. Then someone else is going to step into the breach there with that. Is it the US dollar? Is it the BRICS? Is it the Unicorn? Is it CBDCs? What is it that goes in there? It is a real thing. And that, even though that UN idiot, it's funny what he says, like it's laughable what he says, it's not funny because it's deadly serious. And they are trying to reduce the world's population. If you could reduce the world's population by 1/5, you'd be getting rid of like 1.5 billion people, which is, they want the world's population, these eugenicist freaks that are in charge, they only want 500 million people on planet Earth. And everybody else, they only need 10% of people, to help them live the life that they want to live. And everybody else will be used for sport or for fuel. That's how they look at it. And we're moving to a Hunger Games type society. That's where we're going.
It's messaging, right? You got to hand it to people. They've got really good messaging and a really good PR department. And you say, well, yes, it's evil, but they were able to pull it up. And if you want evidence of that, just look at what happened there for 3 years during their worldwide flu, and look what they were able to accomplish. They were able to convince perfectly healthy people to put poison in their bodies.
I have no sympathy at all, man. I'm sorry.
They were able to convince the entire world to stay home. There are still images out there of downtown Paris, downtown New York, downtown London in the middle of the night on a Friday night that were ghost towns.
Yeah, nothing there.
People were quarantined. So it was a massive success. I would have to think that those people in Switzerland, they probably just can't believe how successful they were. They're beyond their wildest imagination. So the question I'll ask you, Rob, to close this segment out, and I've asked you this before, but it's worth bringing up again. So given that we know that everything we went through was based on a lie, it is provable now that it was all a lie. Given that, the next time, for the next crisis, whether it's a climate lockdown or whether it's a new hemorrhagic fever lockdown, the next time it happens, do you think it's going to be easier for them to convince people to go along, or is it going to be harder for them to? So what do you think?
I don't think people need to be convinced to go along, because it's just the carrot and stick approach. If you leave your house, you're going to be fined. If you leave your house, you're going to be thrown in jail. If you don't do as you're told, you're going to face the consequences of the law. And that's why I say, whatever you do, do not join the military and do not join the police force. Do not. And if you're in the military and the police force, leave. Get out. Leave. You got to stand on your convictions. Oh, I don't have a job. I don't have a way to feed my family. Bad luck. Figure something else out. Become an independent, sovereign person, because you can't be that guard in that concentration camp enforcing those laws. And if you stay there, you will be. And if you stay there in the military, you will be fighting against the Chinese military, who will destroy you on the battlefield. They will destroy you, because there's just more of them than there is of us. There's more of them, and they're very sophisticated. They're a very, very deadly adversary, and they will give you a bloody nose like you wouldn't believe. And your life is not worth doing what these politicians tell you to do. So I don't think it's a question of people resisting. I don't think people will have a choice. And it's going to come down to some very, very difficult times in your life and human history, where you will be forced to make a decision about whether you comply or you no longer comply. If you're in the military, get out. Don't dream about joining the military. Do not join the police force. Leave the police force immediately. Leave. You know better than a concentration camp guard. You know better, because you're enforcing the laws and the rules the same way. And we saw you do it. We saw you do it in the last 3 years. Don't pretend like you didn't do it. Don't pretend like you went to work and you weren't part of it. You were part of it. You were complicit in it. You were complicit in all of it. And you're going to be complicit in the next lot of it. The only way to stop it is to stop it from the inside out. Stop it. Resist them. Just don't do it. Don't do what they say. But people don't have the courage of their convictions, Ed. They're not, because people are just weak sheep, and they're brainwashed by the media. They're brainwashed by the narrative, and they can't think for themselves. They just can't do it. So in answer to your question, I think it will be far easier this time for them to have a climate lockdown. I think it will be far easier for them to have a hemorrhagic fever lockdown. And I think that every person that's out there will go and roll up their sleeve again. Like 99% of you did last time, you're going to do it again. You're going to do it again, because you're easily controlled and you're easily led by these evil, evil satanic leaders that we have.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these policies are they're probably here to stay. What I'm thinking about is, I want to start traveling again, right? And I've been thinking, where would I like to start traveling to? And it occurred to me yesterday, well, I better check to see which country they're going to require me to be double jabbed before, to go to, right? Because now there are still.
I only just threw that out in America. I couldn't go to America, man. I couldn't visit you. Yeah, because I only in the last couple of weeks really just chucked that out.
Yeah. So
I was going to go to Mexico and just walk across the border, man.
There you go. And
so where are the places where you can go that you don't require that?
Yeah. Just stand in line behind the Chinese. Find the Chinese guys. Well, because they're organized. Yeah.
Yeah, they got the shit squared away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So where are you going to go where you don't need to be double jabbed?
There are lots of places I need to see, right? I got lots of friends in UK and Europe. And of course, Australia is real high on the list. I've got to see Australia, and Philippines, Thailand. People love Thailand a lot. I'm not quite sure why, but I really want to see the Philippines.
The land of smiles, man.
I've got a pretty long list of places that I want to see. But like I said, I think a lot of my travels will be determined by, the restrictions. I'm not going to put poison in my body. So that could make a lot of my choices for me. Actually, I want to see, believe it or not, Rob, I want to see Eastern Europe. I want to see Poland. I want to see Bulgaria, Croatia. I want to see Belarus. I want to see Ukraine. Believe it or not, I want to see Russia. Yep. I don't care what you guys say. I'm a history buff, and Russia has a fascinating history, and I really like to see Russia. But
there's one thing I'd say to all of that. Yeah, you got to get on with it, man, because there's a very small window, and that window is closing. And if you want to go and do that, you better do that soon, because if you fast forward 6 months into the future, 9 months into the future, you might not get that opportunity.
Yeah.
No, you're not convinced?
No, I do believe you. I'm just kind of concerned. I got some things I got to get done. Now I got to
get my shit together.
I got to get the doctor and say, hey, can I, get all checked out? Get my, don't want to have a toothache while I'm traveling, so I got to go in and get all that checked out and get all squared away. Yeah.
Good one.
No.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's a good place to wrap it up. Don't forget we're available as a podcast. Come on over to Spotify and Apple and download us as a audio show as well. Come on over to Twitter and Telegram. All of the links are in the description. Thanks, Ed. That was a lot of fun. We'll see you in the next one. It's bye for now.
See you, Robbie.